Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next live stream. I'll be your producer for this session. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today. Thank you for joining.
Of course, thank you. Hey everyone. Today we are here to introduce planning in Microsoft Fabric. What it is, how is it different from existing solutions in the market, and how you can start using the product in your environment. But before we begin, let's start with a very quick intro from our side. I'm Supriya Kashyap, a principal product manager in the Microsoft Fabric team, and I take care of the product responsibilities for our workload planning in Fabric IQ. I work with our engineering, marketing, go-to-market teams to enable organizations to start using our EPM offering planning. And I have my co-host with me here. Liran, over to you.
Thank you, Supriya, and thank you everyone for joining us for this session live or watching that recording. My name is Liran Edelist. I'm based in Boston. I'm representing Lumel here as a Chief Customer Officer that is doing planning for many, many years, and maybe a little bit shy to mention how many years. Happy to be here to co-host, answer any questions, and show you some very cool stuff about planning.
Thank you, Liran. Now, before we get into our content today, I would like to remind that as a participant in Data Days, you may be eligible to receive a 100% discount voucher for your exam DP600, DP700, or DP800. In a sense, you can get Fabric or SQL certified for free. There are limited seats available, so submit your form by August 10th, 2026. You can also go through the URL that's mentioned here. Additionally, you can also join our Fabric IQ user panel and help provide inputs on our product roadmap through this QR code. There are specific product areas where if you have experience or interest, you can directly connect with our product group. Just as a housekeeping item, I would also want to take a moment to remind everyone that this is meant to be an interactive session. Liran and I would appreciate as many questions as you can put in the chat. We have moderators in the chat who will be there to answer questions. We'll be taking a look at them intermittently and we'll answer them to the best of our capabilities. Taking a moment to introduce our moderators, we have Alpa Buddhavati, who's a Microsoft Data Platform MVP and a Microsoft certified trainer. We have Javier Villegas, who is also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, a certified trainer and IT director at MSC. And we have Taylor Amy, who is a Fabric Community super user, data services lead at Sherit International. Thank you, team. Now, with that, let's quickly go through what we are going to talk about today. First, we'll provide you an introduction of what Fabric planning is, who is it for, what problem it solves, and so on. I'll then hand it over to my co-host, who'll take you through, Liran, who'll take you through some short live demos on planning and will help you understand how the UI works, where you can go for different capabilities, etc. Finally, we'll take a look about the practical considerations for workload onboarding. So some of the questions that our users generally have around pricing, consumption, etc., we'll try and answer them. And as I said, we'll be monitoring the chat for any Q&A that may come. Okay, so let's do a quick level set on where we are at. So by now, I'm assuming that everyone watching this live knows what Fabric is, but at a very high level, Fabric is Microsoft's unified data and analytics platform. It supports end-to-end data workflows, including data ingestion, transformation, real-time analytics, reporting. It provides a lot of integrated experience into one platform, such as data engineering, data factory, data science, real-time intelligence, etc. The piece I want to anchor today would be Fabric IQ. So this is the semantic and AI intelligence layer within Fabric that gives business meaning to your data. Everything that we are going to talk about for the next 1 hour sits within the IQ workload in Fabric. So let's double click on what Fabric IQ is. It's essentially a set of capabilities that form the enterprise intelligence layer. So 3 layers we are talking about when we say, what do we mean by semantic intelligence or business context, right? So you have unified data coming in through one lake, and we'll talk about that in a moment. You have business intelligence coming in through semantic models that captures your organization's unique context through the semantic model that you have built. And now you have operational intelligence coming in through ontologies. So we have these 3 layers delivering the semantic and AI intelligence layers, and they provide business meaning to your data. This could be structured, unstructured, real-time, graph, any kind of data, anything and everything that is stored in one lake. So one lake is the data foundation. Now think of this from this perspective. Try and envision a mental model. You were already very familiar with one lake, a unified data lake for your whole organization, your central repository where you can store, manage, and govern all your data. Now, one lake and semantic model used to provide you with an understanding of what happened. So that's your actuals, your history, your live data, right? Another workload in Fabric that you were very familiar with is real-time intelligence. Now, real-time intelligence extends the context that one lake has provided with past data into present. So with streaming, monitoring, you would get to know what is happening right now. So far, everything in your data estate is either backward-looking or present-looking, which basically begs the question on where do you track what should happen, right? So you looked into the past, you looked into the present, but how do you really look into the future? Where is the forward-looking view? And that is the gap that the platform had, which we are now bridging with planning in Fabric IQ. That's where planning in Fabric IQ comes in. It's the forward-looking decision layer sitting within the Microsoft Fabric IQ. It lets you forecast, simulate, and drive outcomes on top of that unified semantic foundation. We are very excited to share that planning in Fabric IQ is now generally available. As of last week, we went general availability with our workload. What that means is Fabric planning is now available in your region for you to start playing around with the service. As we are into general availability, playing around with the service will incur billing and will incur capacity consumption. Both of those are very crucial concerns that I'm going to spend a couple of minutes towards the next second half of the presentation talking about. But before I do that, let's see what is enterprise planning. Let me ground planning for anyone and everyone who doesn't live in a finance world. Now, enterprise planning does a lot of things. It connects sales, finance, operations, different functions within an organization around the same data. So it spans a lot of use cases, starting from FP&A, where you do annual budgeting, rolling forecast. You can do sales forecasting and target setting. You can do sales and operations planning. There could be demand, supply, inventory, and reporting and governance, so on and so forth. So planning has many, many use cases. And if you talk about enterprise planning software in the market, you would know that as of today, it is very expensive. We'll talk about how we address some of those concerns as well when we reach the billing module. But even apart from pricing, what are the other problems that you see in enterprise planning today? And that's where I would like to engage with you a little bit. If you could put in chat that with the existing enterprise planning software, what are some of the challenges that you are seeing? Um, I would love to hear from some of you. So please put your responses in the chat. Meanwhile, I will move on. I will look at our moderators to collect the responses and share, but from what we have seen from our initial market research, is there are basically two main kind of problems that exist. One is enterprise planning is very disconnected today. All your transactional systems, anything, whether it is your ERP, whether it is your CRM, the HR data, the master data, everything sits in one platform. And what you do is generally we have seen organizations do some sort of ETL to take that data out of that transactional system. We do see our customers and users doing the planning in a siloed planning platform, whether it is through Excel or through legacy planning software. And then again, because you need to visualize these reports, and as you may be aware, 93 to 97% of Fortune 500 organizations use Power BI for their variance and reporting analysis. There's another ETL involved where you take that plan output and you put it in your BI software. So you see there is a lot of ETL happening, right? And what does that do to your data or to your data estate? There is a lot of complex integration, a lot of data duplication, reconciliation, latency, expensive TCO, all of that issue arise. And that makes planning very inefficient and expensive. And the second problem, remember I said there are two problems. So one is the disconnected issue, right? What is the second issue? The second problem that we have seen is in the age of AI, how do you run AI on siloed data? Every organization wants to enable agents as part of their workforce now. Now, how would agents have context if your context is split across so many multiple stacks? If you have multiple sources of truth, your organization is not going to be AI ready. And that is one thing that organization enterprises care the most about. What planning in Fabric IQ does, it is solidifies your plan next to your data argument. So you have everything in one place, everything governed by Fabric's governance model, and you can do planning on top of your semantic layer. So to solve all of these problems that I just discussed, what are we doing about it? We are transforming the EPM market with planning in Fabric IQ. Now, as Liran would show you in a couple of minutes from now, planning in Fabric IQ is a super feature-rich product, and it does a lot of things end-to-end. But if I could highlight a couple of things real quick here, there are 4 things I want you to pay attention to that would help. One, it enables enterprise planning natively in Fabric. Most of our customers' users are already on Fabric as a data platform, so there is no new platform that they need to be aware of. The workload sits on Fabric. Now you can model your budgets and forecast with write back to Fabric SQL. That reiterates my data point that my point earlier that all of your data sits within one estate. So now you have Fabric SQL where the write back happens, and Liran will talk more about what we mean by that. Third is you have the opportunity now to unify your goals, plans, and actuals on one shared semantic layer. And last, your AI can now reason not just on past data, but also on your forward-looking data. And this last point, the reason ahead for AI agents, is the differentiator versus every other BI story that you will see out there in the market. Now, let me quickly take you through, architecturally how it works. So, architecturally, OneLake brings all of your business data into Fabric. And it's not just the Microsoft estate that you will consolidate your data from. Even if you have your data sitting in external data sources, could be Snowflake, could be Databricks, etc. We have capabilities like shortcuts and mirrorings, and we have 90 plus connectors through SAP, Oracle, and the rest, where you can get your data mirrored in OneLake without physically moving your data. Now, on top of OneLake sits the semantic model. Now, Power BI is something that all of you would be familiar with. Power BI gives you these semantic models where that captures the unique context to your business. As we speak, there are more than 22 million plus semantic model in production and counting. On top of all of that sits Fabric Plan. So now your plan is taking the context from both OneLake and the semantic model. So now think about it. You already have your data in Power BI. You don't need to extract it. You don't need to build an Excel model. You don't need to load it back anywhere. We already sit on top of semantic layer. So there is no data requirement step. There is no separate database. It's completely self-service. That's essentially what I talked about is with 22 million plus semantic model, you can ground your BI and AI in your business knowledge. Now, one concern that we have heard in the market is, before I actually move forward with a concern, the point that we are trying to double click here is every plan that you can make on top of semantic model is super easy to make with Fabric Planning, and that is our goal. We want you to start seeing Fabric Planning as an adjacent to Power BI and semantic model. One of the concerns that we have seen repeatedly from users, customers, sellers in the market is, will it handle our kind of planning? And that's a very relevant question. The reason that's very relevant is all of the existing solutions, EPM solutions in the market right now, they target one or the other use cases. What that means is they will be very good in one use case of planning, but they do not provide support for other use cases or may not be as good in providing support for other use cases. We are very happy to share that Fabric Planning provides a comprehensive coverage for 100% of planning methods. Whether you look at top-down planning, whether you look at bottoms-up planning, rolling forecast, driver-based planning, so on and so forth, you name it, we are providing support for that. So every kind of planning is what our software, our solution supports. One last thing before I give it to my co-host to take you through the demo live is, how do we provide all of this? We provide planning with 3 integrated capabilities built into one foundation. It's planning, power table, and intelligence. Planning is really the heart of what we are talking about. It lets you author budgets, forecast scenarios, etc. We also have Power Table, which is our reference data management tool. And you will see in a minute why it makes sense to have Power Table sitting in the same estate as planning is and what benefits it provides. And lastly, we also have intelligence, which is our variance reporting and analysis within the Fabric Plan. So one foundation, 3 jobs. With that, I hand it over to Liran to take you through how the product works in real world. Liran, over to you.
Thank you so much, Supriya. Again, happy to be here and to share that. We always have in those presentations, the most challenging part is when you need to switch windows, right? So I will be switching into my window in a second, and you should be able to see my screen now. Let's wait a few seconds until the streaming service is there, and that's it. So you mentioned that correctly. Many EPM systems are having that sort of an old-fashioned way. We need to have a developer studio. We need to have different user interface for different users, and we are having here one interface for everything. And we have those three models of planning, power table, and intelligence. So how do we start? It's very easy. You need to have Fabric. That's the very first requirement, right? But once you have Fabric, no installation is needed, no third-party connection and all those type of stuff. You just go into your Fabric workspace, you select new item. You would probably not going to be surprised that plan is already in my favorite. If you don't have that in your favorite, you can just search for this item named plan, and you can literally start immediately with building your first planning workload or planning model. Now, the idea around what we're doing here is that in some organization, there might be some restrictions to your permission and so on. So my recommendation for everyone, under Microsoft Learn portal, you will be able to find prerequisition for plan. That might be requiring some IT, to check some boxes. So make sure you read that, make sure you build your initial connection correctly, and you're literally free to go. So it shouldn't be taking more than 5-10 minutes to do those prerequisites, but pay attention to them. That will save you some time. And literally, that's the starting point. So if you follow the prerequisites, if you have Fabric workspace available for you, now you can actually start with planning. So we start planning at most use cases with some database that we want to run the planning on top of that. And in our case, I would always recommend to work with a semantic model. We know that a lot of users are saying, oh, I have an Excel file, let's load it. You can definitely do that, but the best practice, reuse your semantic models. Semantic models have a lot of capabilities that we are reusing it as part of the planning, if that's the logical of dates, hierarchies, dimensions, measures that you already been building. All of them are available there. So just use semantic model, connect to your semantic model. You just need to hit the connections that you created in that prerequisite piece. I will use one of my connection here. I have a lot of connection, as you can see, and you can choose semantic model of your choice. And that's it. Now I'm having my data source ready for my planning exercise. So again, getting ready, super simple. Make sure you follow prerequisite, creating a connection to your semantic model, build a new item, and you're ready to go. And now the next piece, you should start, planning, power table, or with intelligence. So Supriya, where do you want to start?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for walking us through the prerequisites, Liran. So we are in the landing page, and I see that you already shared why semantic model is the source of truth. Now, the planning sheet offers a lot of capabilities. Before we dive deeper, would you want to give us a quick orientation?
Absolutely. And just because we have a lot to show today, I already started a little bit, pre-baked ingredients, okay? So this is my planning sheet for today. And maybe just from an orientation perspective, like with many other tools, we have some menu options here. We have menu at the right side, and we have, very similar to Power BI, our page explorer here to the left. So everything can be expandable as needed. So we'll just hide that explorer and let me show what happens here at the right. So on the right side, when I'm in my planning sheet, I'm having my semantic layer connection. And that's really the great piece around that. If you already have semantic layer, no data integration, don't build any new database, just reuse what you already spent and invested in. So this is my semantic layer. I have a lot of dimensions, a lot of different measures here. I'm not going to go through that. By the way, all of that was built by AI, so it's not, none of the data here is belong to any kind of a real entity. And what I did already, and you can see that in my second tab here, is I already selected some fields for our demo today. What I'm doing, this is like a food manufacturer company. They are selling their products through different, what we call trade classes, or we can say like customer groups. You can see full service, casual, convenience store, from pharmacy chains, and so on. And I just literally selected the dimensions and the measures that I really want to focus in my planning from my semantic layer. I just checked those boxes and created my initial view. Again, here to the right side, you can decide if you want to hide, expand that. The fields and the filter very similar to Power BI. If you're already Power BI expert, that should be like, again, super easy to start with. Also, I created some filters here just to make this presentation, especially for those of you who might be seeing us through your mobile devices. So we'll try to trim as much as possible the view so you can see as much as possible. So here is my starting point, selecting measures, selecting fields. I'm getting into my first report. Now, the first and the easiest way to start is to focus in the planning menu here that has a bunch of capabilities. I will not be able to go through all of them, but let's get into the first one. So I'm seeing this, right, pivot style report that I can drill down from each one of my segments into the regional level, but I can also drill down from my year into the quarter and into the individual months. What you can see here is that I'm having my budget for the full year of 2026. Actual is missing. It's only 2 months of actual. This demo might need to get some refresh with data. But the most important piece for people, we usually like to get like that kind of a zero suppression. We do have support in rugged hierarchy. You just need to go to the layout. You can choose other type of layouts from here. And you can ask the system to suppress the null value. So now my visualization is a little bit nicer. This layout, by the way, is a fantastic one. You can change the view from kind of a top-down hierarchy into a table and even into our famous tree view that allow you to analyze the data in a more visual way. So, keep using that as needed. And I'll get back into my hierarchy layout. Now, the second piece in my planning exercise here is that let's see what else we have here. And again, I'll skip a couple of obvious stuff. I can manage some of my aggregation if I want to have them or not. But what I want to focus now, this is my budget. I have 2 months of actual, maybe management seeing, a lot of traction in the market. I want to revise my budget, right? This is a planning tool. This is not just a tool that allowing us to analyze data. And in that sense, I want to create my budget adjustment. So I will go into insert column. I will select a new column that I want to add. So I will just create an empty series. That's adjustment. I usually want to start adjustment very simple, just as an empty column. And I will set that into budget adjustment. I can say budget adjustment. Okay, so I'm giving a title for this new column that I want to add. The next piece, I have some control about how I want it to see. I want it as a visual measure, so I will be able to create adjustment for each and every month. I can decide on different aggregation types. This is very handy if I want the adjustment to be as a percentage, then maybe aggregations should be like weighted average or calculation or something like that. I'm also allowing to distribute parent value to children. I will show you that top-down allocation that is coming. But if I want people to make the adjustment only at the lowest level, I can just turn this one off. Then some other very cool features, when people doing adjustments, sometimes management will say, well, we're allowing user only to do plus minus 5% of the original budget, which is perfectly fine. Then, we can have that minimum maximum value as a calculation behind the scene that we can check out. And in that sense, we can control the data entry and make sure that people are putting the data in the range that we are expecting them to do. We can set a default value, and we can actually even create a mini macro on change formula. Like when someone is changing something, maybe it will create alert, maybe it will initiate my workflow for approval. And we can decide how do we allow input here. That could be even based on formula to allow some more sophisticated approval flow and maybe even some sort of permission. So every column, every measure that we will add into our database, into our application, we can control, not just say, okay, it's a data entry, but it's actually a smart data entry variable. We call that a measure. So let's create that. And now I have my budget adjustment just quickly added into my visual. Let's focus just to make sure that people are seeing that correctly in their screen. I will focus on the second quarter for my budget adjustment. And what I can do, I can go into like the individual place. This is under full service segment in APAC. I can go in Japan and say, well, I really think that they should be putting another $1 million into their budget. So I can put that 1 million, and by nature it will be aggregating up, and I can go into some other countries and I create that 1.5 million, and so on and so forth. So I can just enter the data. Now what you can see here is that the data is quickly aggregated, but it's also at the second quarter. So if I will expand the second quarter into the different months of the second quarter, actually the system is smart enough already to allocate that into the individual months. If I do want to make sure that I also see the total at the months after that, I will just go here and I will activate the left side of my column subtotal. So now when I'm expanding Q2, I can see the total and I can see the breakdown of the different months. Right now you can see that the way it was cascading it down is equal for each one of the months. We can control that. So let's see, how can we control this type of a data entry? Just delete that. Let's say I really want to add maybe 70 million for the total budget of Q2. So I will put 70M, that for 70 million. Again, initial allocation will be automatic or equally spread. But now I can say, well, you know, let's use maybe our budget proportion for the adjustment. So I will just go here, I will select my Q2 budget, and now it's literally reallocated within the exact same proportion as my budget. I can do it based on actual, last year, different period, different weights. That is very easy and handy. From this point going on, when I'm changing now 70 million, maybe to a less aggressive target, I just want to adjust for 60 million, I will keep, the system now has data, so it will keep the same proportion. Let's collapse that again. Convenience store, right? I really believe convenience store going to grow much more than maybe other store. So I potentially can put here maybe 10 million, right? So I can just put the 10 million here, and then I can lock this, okay? I can lock this cell, and I can go back here into the top level, going back into maybe my 60 million goal, and within that 60 million, when I do that again, because this is locked, the reallocation will affect all other areas, regions, segment without this one. So again, very simple, just everything out of the box. We did it all together. Now this is budget. Yes.
No, I was just saying this is perfect, and this is very handy in terms of like you showed our audience on data entry. Now, data entry is great, but a lot of customers would also want to automate their planning process, right? And so how does Fabric Plan support the modeling and forecasting?
Perfect. So let's take it into a couple of different stages. The first one is that I just maybe want to add some formula. Formula could use for driver-based planning. I want to do price times quantity, previous months, inventory models, whatever. But it could be even as simple as I did budget adjustment. Maybe I just want to aggregate, right? Budget adjustment and my gross revenue budget. We have a couple of options for that. One of them will be the modeling. We can have like what we call a measure model. But the other option would be I can just insert a column with a formula. Now, for those who are very tech savvy and want to build a sophisticated calculation, there are almost unlimited amount of functions available for you. We are here in a webinar. We want to keep everything very simple. So I will just pick my budget adjustment plus my budget number. I will create that. And now I'm having this new measure. It's probably better to call that like adjusted budget. So just renaming that. Now I'm having my adjusted budget. So this is option number one. I can add formulas as much as I want. I'm going to show about 4 or 5 different ways on how we make it more sophisticated. So stay with me. The second option is to say, well, okay, we did this adjusted budget, but maybe I really want to play on the total numbers of my budget. I really want to make it maybe even more small, more simple. So what I'm going to do here, I'm still using my planning tab here. And in my show columns, let's hide a couple of those stuff. Again, just to make sure that you see everything. I will keep the adjusted budget. I will remove maybe my actual for a second, just to make it a little bit more trimmed. But what I want to do now, I want to take my gross revenue budget and just create a simulation on top of that. I can still go into my column and I create like a simulate column. We'll call that gross revenue budget simulation. I create that. And now with this simulation column, I'm getting like a nice feature that like we can literally just, going up and increase percent. I can go here and maybe decrease a little bit. And the beauty around those simulation measures is whenever we make any change here, the system will automatically calculate the variance from the base. So we can create that sort of an ad hoc simulation. If I want to do a big scenario simulation, I can even go into my modeling tab and create a scenario which is literally going to duplicate everything for us and create an additional simulation. So those are the basic two, in a way. I'm not even saying that's a second grade. That's still like, at the end of the first stage of sophistication. But now some people will say, well, I'm changing the budget in the mid-year. That is kind of okay. But usually what we want to do, we want to create what we call the rolling forecast. And this is one of the more sophisticated modeling capabilities. I will just skip here for a moment. The reason I'm skipping here is to keep our view more clean. I can, of course, keep moving in the same visual. And what I'm having here is my actual, the historical actual. Again, same data set, only 2 months. And I want to create my rolling forecast. So literally, I don't want to create the full year budget. I want to create only the budget for the next 10 months of the year. So that would be the modeling tab. And that's, again, the more sophisticated capability. I'm going into forecast. And the system has a nice wizard for us to use for forecasting. Those who have been using our preview model was one screen fits all. Now we said, okay, let's simplify it for the users. And what I'm doing here, I will keep the forecast. The forecast will be from March till the end of the year, right? So this is the basic configuration. I will go next, and now closed period are the periods that already actualize, right? So I really want to link them into our measure of actual. And the open period, that's the 10 months of plan. I can keep it as a data input, but I can also say I really want to have a default value of my budget over there. So I don't want to start from scratch. I can start from my budget as an example. I will just hit save. And literally within like those 3 clicks, I'm now getting my rolling forecast. It will be locked for historical period, but for open period, like from March going forward, you can see that I can tweak those numbers now, and very quickly the numbers will be changed and cascaded down. Supriya, I already know what you're going to ask next. You will say, well, people use budget, but budget was already preceded. We're in the AI era. Why won't we try to do some statistical forecasting? That's fine. We can do statistical forecasting as well, right? So we have predict function, and this predict function, I don't want to do any spoiler, but this predict function in the very near future going to be very much enhanced with all the AI capabilities that Microsoft has to offer. But for now, you just go into predict. You can decide how you want to set up your statistical model. There are some settings here, like you can put on top of the prediction some growth factor. You can decide if it's go bottom up, like from the area level and like literally a row level planning, or a top down. You can decide how you want to see your seasonality. You can decide if you want to ignore negative value, which sometimes, you get negative value in your revenue planning. You want to ignore them in the statistical model. Couple of other settings that I will skip here. I will just run the forecast, save forecast, and literally within just a few seconds, I was able to create my statistical modeling now for that. And I did it only for one channel. I can do the exact same piece. I can run the prediction from a top level, run the same forecast, save it, and I can get it from my whole data set now. So very quickly, I can set that. The next piece is, and again, just because we want to show you a bunch of other capabilities, and I know that we're starting to look at the time, we do have a measure model and row model for more sophisticated calculation. I think I've seen one of the users said, I'm really interested of seeing that. So we definitely have some videos online. We will definitely going to have a couple of more sessions here, but you can check out the row model. Allows you to create like a row level formulas other than column level. We can create some connections between measures and create like, more sophisticated measure tree and showing them. But maybe before even we go next, I want to show something super important. I can do communications through that. This is a Microsoft integrated tool, so I can literally add a comment here. I can tag one of my colleagues, Eric, just because we met this morning in a great meeting with one of the Fabric early adapters, Fabric Plan early adapter, and I can say, Eric, can you change that? Or update, or whatever it is. And now when I'm doing that, what happens, Eric is going to get a message from me in Teams, and he will be able to log in into my work, into this workspace, into this report, and he can reply and answer here. So this is really great when we want to task someone. Okay, thank you. Right, this is really nice to create a conversation not disconnected from our planning tool, and it's all part together in the same piece. And before we're going next, just skipping here, but a lot of capabilities also. Try it. It's very easy to start and to try. So you can add the text column, right? So you can have some notes if you want to make sure that the notes are not just in the in-cell comment, and you can write notes here. And you can add a couple of other capabilities in terms of columns. One of them could be using, list for workflow. I will not be able to cover the full workflow capability, but I can have something for approval and quickly just use one of our presets for the approval status. And now I'm quickly have something that can use also to in review, or if you want to approve, and maybe in that specific cell, I want to approve everything. So that's again, very basic with more sophisticated capabilities that can literally answer a lot of planning scenario without even getting into deep dive of features that we will not be able to cover today.
Right. No, but this was super interesting, Laurent, and the capability to notify, stakeholders via Teams, that sounded super cool to me. As we are seeing, this is a feature-rich product, and we probably will not be able to cover every capability. But I would encourage our audience to also put in the chat if there is any specific feature they would like us to show in the live demo. If not in this session, we can always organize subsequent sessions. But Liran, one of the questions that I keep hearing from customers around the world is, where does all of these data that you are planning and forecasting, where does this get stored, and how does write back work? Could you briefly touch upon that?
Of course. So the first piece to remember, everything that I was doing here was captured, right? In a database. This database belongs to you, our customers, right? It doesn't go to any third-party vendor. It's not leaving your Microsoft tenant, the same as your Power BI and other databases are kept in Fabric, in Azure. It's the same. So every data, every entry, any change in the report saved into your own tenant. You don't need to be super concerned about permission, security, and that kind of stuff. That's number one. However, this data is saved into our application database. And although you may have access to the application database, which I'm not going to show you on purpose, we ask you not necessarily to get into the application database, but what you can or should do is to use this write back option. The write back options, I will go through the settings super quickly. The write back option allows you within a few clicks to take all your plan data back into your Fabric database. Why would you like to do it? Because you may want to keep different version. You want to do the rolling forecast every month and then compare those different rolling forecasts. I saw one of the users is asking to do maybe price times units calculation. So you do that in one sheet, and then the result, the approved, you want to take it into a COGS model. So you can do it through the database or through connected planning. So there are many reasons why would you like to write data. So the way we work with the write back setting, the first piece is that we are deciding on a destination in our Fabric database. You can add a destination, give a name for your destination table on Fabric, and that's number one. The second piece, we already predefined how data should be written back. We have 4 types of format. Long format, which literally means the measures will be on rows. The wide format means measures are on columns. By the way, you can always see that preview. It will show you all the measures and how they're literally set up, and who is making the changes, if that's a format with changes or without changes. So we can decide that. In the next piece, you can create filters. An example for a filter could be, I really want to write back only rows that have been approved. Otherwise, we'll keep them in the application database until they have been approved. So you can create different filter types based on the data you want. there is an extra layer of filter that is literally saying, okay, gross revenue and budget are already existing in my database. I can just remove them from my setting of the write back. Notes I can or cannot write. It's really up to me. And also some other nice features here is that I can enable automatic write back, yes or no. Sometimes from a workflow perspective, I want the user to do the write back and hit this kind of a write back button only when they completed their sheet. The other option, enable automatic write back, will usually create that write back every few seconds, so people don't need to remember that they need to hit save. There are advantages, disadvantages, like every other option to both methods. But the idea is that write back of every data goes directly to your database. You can connect it back to your semantic layer and get a full connected experience. And as you mentioned, readiness for AI, for agentic to review the data, to use the data, to give us alerts over time, and so on.
Perfect. No, thank you for explaining the write back architecture. Laurent, we are also being mindful of time, and we have focused a lot on planning sheets so far. When should customers use Power Table instead? Could you also give us a brief, overview of Power Table?
Yes, now let me do something that I'm not doing very often, but just because this is like such a big question, I'm switching just for a second to a few slides, okay? So we have shown how planning is coming into the database and all those features and functions in the planning sheet. And we can do data entry, we can do rolling forecast, all those different scenarios, simulation, time dimension, all of those pieces related to our planning template. And that's literally what brings us into the master data management. There are many use cases in planning where we say, well, the end user needs to control on dimensions. They need maybe to add new potential customers. That's a master data. Sometimes they are holding their GL hierarchies on Excel spreadsheet, and this Excel spreadsheet needs to be shared between different people. You want to get approval there for, changing master data is not something you want to allow every user. Sometimes you want to have different stakeholders to approve that. So all this area, we call it sometimes not just a master or reference data management, we call it sometimes even data application. So all the different types of data management are there. It could be baseline for planning. It could be row level adjustment to transactions. Everything you think about it more as a table, less as a multi-dimensional modeling, that can go into Power Table. And now, just in the, again, sense of time, I already created a connection to one of my tables. Let's just do save and proceed. By the way, this is something pretty handy. Whenever you make a change, of course, the system will ask you to make sure you're saving that. And what I'm having here for Power Table is a connection that I already made for one of my tables in the database. That's my customer dimension. Now, IT people, and I'm sure a lot of IT folks are watching us, they will say, oh my God, you're going to let people touching our tables. I'm saying, well, sometimes that's the best way of doing that as long as it having the right governance. And the right governance mean that the first piece after I'm creating this connection, I'm managing access. And I'm deciding in the access management who is allowed to change current data, who is allowing to add new rows. And yes, we can add new rows into tables, and who can delete rows if I want to allow to delete rows. And this is not just in the row level, it's also in the column access. So who is literally having access? In that sense, I can say that maybe I'm not allowing anyone to change the customer information, but I might be allowing to change their payment terms or to change their credit score and something like that. So first piece, whenever we are connecting to a table, we can adjust those type of stuff. The next piece, again, if a user want to add data, change data, we can make his work much more easy. This example, is it a key account, yes or no? I don't want people writing maybe or probably or something like that. I can go here, press edit, and changes from a text into a checkbox, right? And the checkbox, instead of showing us true, you see that the system already figured out that it's yes or no. So it was changing even automatically without me manually changing that. And now that's it. Now, instead of the user thinking, okay, what do I type here? It's literally, is it key account? Yes. It's not key account? No. Probably remind some people CRM type of a screen. The other pieces here, if I want people maybe to change the tier of a customer or change the account type, again, very similar. I can edit this field, make sure that this field is literally becoming like a single select using maybe distinct value from another lookup table or values that are already existing here. I'm not allowing to add more, and literally just with a few clicks, we are allowing to set up this power table to allow end user to do that. And now I know that we have a lot of other stuff to show, but I just want to mention some stuff I will not be able to show it today. We don't necessarily need to connect to an existing table. We can actually load data from a CSV or Excel file and create a table even with this process. We can create an approval process. So instead of being able to save the database, it will trigger approval flow that you can see in our videos and hopefully maybe in the next session. And we can even expose this table as a form to users to update. And we can create automation. So literally after update, maybe there will be a store procedure running emails, refreshes to semantic layers, and a lot of other stuff. So this is, we call it Power Table because it's a very powerful tool to manage data in tables. So that's kind of my very quick overview of Power Table. I hope wasn't too quick, but still a lot to show you.
No, this was perfect, and it was super easy to get started with Power Table. We will be wrapping up with the demo, but before we wrap up, do you want to quickly take a minute to highlight the capability in the intelligence sheet, which is the third part of our capability, and then we'll move forward with the rest of the content.
Right. So the intelligence sheet, maybe again, very quickly, just after we show the different options. By the way, this is really nice. We can do with Power Table, also Gantt chart and so on. So the intelligence sheet is literally a sort of an aggregator within the tool itself. It's a reporting tool, but it allows to do interactive reporting, taking data both from a semantic model, from our planning sheets, and from our data management, from our tools management. And it allows us to do very nice formatted financial report. For those who are familiar with IBCS, it is IBCS certified, which is now actually an ISO type of a certified solution for business communication. It allows you to create some customization to the visual, to create the interactive dashboard, to do planning and data visualization all together. That's the way, it's kind of look. You can build and take any object. You can see this is literally the object we created together just a few moments ago. You can add filters, you can add visuals. So that's our way to visualize stuff. We have over 100 different visuals. It is a very rich and powerful tool to any type of reporting. So you get your reporting, interactive reporting, planning, data management all together. And this one is really allowing you to create very impressive user interface.
Perfect. Thank you, Laurent. This was super helpful. If I could take back the screen, I assume we are done with demo. We have last 8 minutes left. There are certain key considerations I would like the audience to familiarize with. So I'm going to take over the screen now. Give me 1 second while I...
As we mentioned, this is the most problematic part at each and every webinar, switching screen.
Yes. Can you see my screen? Can you confirm?
Yeah, it's loading. Yes, I think we can all see it now.
Okay, perfect. Now you can see. Okay. So, you saw what feature rich, how mature our product is. It has already been key marquee enterprise customers have already started using our product in their production environment. But as we talk about the usage, there are some key considerations that I would like to take you all through. And most important of them is pricing. So a question automatically comes to everyone's mind is, how is it priced? The product is great, but how is it priced? What is my bill going to look like, right? So the core idea behind that we have followed when we thought about pricing the product is everything is consumption-based. It consumes your existing fabric capacity. So unlike all of the EPM tools in the market, there is no separate subscription, no per seat license cost that you will incur. And why did we go with that? So you see, planning is a cyclical activity. Rarely does an organization does planning for 12 months of a fiscal year, right? They do planning at the beginning of the fiscal year. They do some edits during the, as more data points come in during the year. And then towards the end of the year, they want to match how they landed per their plan, right? So to ensure that users are not unnecessarily paying for a license throughout the year, we based our pricing on Fabric capacity consumption. So anyone who is in on Fabric, who already has a Fabric tenant, can start using planning within their environment. And any unused capacity that flows to other Fabric workloads. So it's a very consumption-based pricing. Now, what do we mean by session-based billing? So by session-based billing, we mean that every time a user meaningfully interacts with the planning artifact. So you go and you create a planning artifact, you play around with the planning sheet, power table, intelligence, it starts a session. And once a session is started, it runs for 30 days continuously. After 30 days, if you decide to no longer use it, then your session is aborted and you are only billed for that one specific 30-day window. If you continue to interact with your plan item, then you will continue to be billed for the subsequent sessions. So that's what we mean by session-based billing. And it is scoped at your tenant, user, and capacity level. So let's talk a little bit about what are the different roles and user personas as we think about billing. So you see there are 3 different user personas we have tried to define: planner, stakeholder, and viewer. And as you move from right to left, the capabilities, the permissions that we have allowed different personas increase. So your planner is the actual author, modeler, and admin of a plan item. They create the plan item, they have all of the edit rights, and they can build and manage the data models. Think about the FP&A teams and analysts within your organization who design the model. They will fall into the planner category. So they have the maximum permission. They also incur the highest charge. Then you have stakeholders. You have collaborators who do not author the plan item by themselves, but you would need to collaborate with them to provide approval, to provide some comments, as Liran earlier was showing, to trigger some sort of order change capture, etc. Right? Think about department heads whom you want to you want to take their input once you have made the plan. So stakeholders also have edit rights, but have limited edit rights compared to planner and are charged at a slightly lower rate. And then the last, you have viewers. So think about your CFOs or business execs who are just consumers of plan item. They do not edit, they do not provide any input, they just look at the plan item and they are the viewers, right? And so viewers have very limited right, but also they are charged at the lowest rate. We have all of these information available at the Microsoft portal in the billing blog that I had authored a month ago. But for your benefit, this is how the metering works. So for every hour that a planner uses the Fabric plan, we have 1.16 CU hours consumption. Same for stakeholder and same for viewer. Different rates are mentioned here. The numbers that you see in the big box, 847, 168, and 37, is averaged out over a 30-day period. We also estimate a 30% buffer capacity because plan interacts with other Fabric resources like SQL DB, semantic model, endpoint, and so that consumes 30%. There are some advanced planning use cases that consume 2 CU hours per successful job. I'm going to skip that, but that is all that we had to cover from our perspective. With that, we are almost near the end of the time. Yes, Lara.
I think let's just, because there are a few questions here that I really like to answer. So I know that we want to be sensitive to time. Maybe we'll just take another 1, 2, or 3 minutes for that. But Supriya, maybe one comment for that kind of a pricing mechanism. This is super innovative, right? That we are not asking people to say, okay, you need to decide how many users you have and make a 5 years commitment in advance. Literally what you use is what you get. So some people are saying, hey, why is it a month? I'm saying, well, most other vendor will ask you to do licensing for 3 years in advance, and you need to calculate how many users. So this is really fair type of a modeling, and based on the research I was making in the market, it's not just saving money and being kind of a fair billing model. It's also save a lot of time because you are staying in the same platform where you're reusing data that is already exists. So you save not just on licensing, but also on the overall architecture. So that's kind of my comment. Now, there were a couple of questions. I just want to recap. I was unable to do it before. So there were some questions about commenting and so on. I will not show it now, but there is a way that if you use your right filter, you can create page level comments as well, and you can show all the comments that have been made. So if you are concerning about, hey, you really want to put yourself some notes, you can do that, and you can see all the comments together, not just those who are hiding into those cells. You can actually visualize them, and there are a couple of other mechanisms that allows you to keep the comments and make sure that, once you took a break for a weekend, start Monday, you can have your comment available where they are existing. So I think that's number one. The second question was about permissions and access right. So couple of things around that. We are sitting on top of semantic layers. So if you put row level security, that's one level of security we will be supporting. Second level of security is, of course, your permission on a specific workspace. And there are a bunch of permissions you can do in the planning items as well. They will be coming with some documentation over the next 2 weeks. You can create some default pages and additional permissions on each and every column or measure. So that is also enabled. And the idea about those, we call it sometimes planning sheet, but it's literally a planning template. And the idea is that with the proper security, you build one template that can be used by multiple dozens or even hundreds of users across the organization. I think I was able to cover most of the question I followed. And yeah, I think there was some calculation about price, volume mix, all those type of stuff. Of course, this is a modeling we can do. And then again, feel free to ask questions. We do have, I think, Ask Me Anything type of a session in a week or two from now. Feel free to post questions. There are some contact details. Our names. You can connect via LinkedIn as well. And it was super pleasure being here. Thank you, Supriya.
Thank you. Thanks, Laurent. Very generous of you to stay longer and answer questions. So we have also dropped our email alias. If there are any feedback, questions, or concerns, feel free to reach out to us. It was wonderful presenting to this audience. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find our survey link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.